Hello and welcome to Arcana Index. Here, each week, we're taking a look at one piece of Unearthed Arcana that's been released for Dungeons & Dragons 5.24. Then, we discuss its viability to use in your home games, as well as any changes you might want to consider. So if you're a player or a DM who's looking for more options to use at your table, welcome. Hopefully we can provide some insights. This week, because of how much ground there was to cover in the newly released, updated Psion class, we're going to be covering the new and updated spells in the document, as well as the Psion spell list and talking about any standout spells that are available. The original plan was to cover subclasses too, but as I'm getting into this is just going to be too much to cover for one video. I will cover those, but for today, we're just going to focus on spells. First up, we're going to cover all of the new and updated spells in this document. We have 17 spells to cover. I will be talking about them in the order they are presented in the document. First up, we have Dalzim's Horrid Wilting. This is an 8th level necromancy spell that is available to Psions, sorcerers, and wizards. It is one action to cast and has an instantaneous duration. The spell says, you draw moisture from every creature in a 30-foot cube centered on a point within range. Each creature in that area makes a Constitution saving throw, taking 12d8 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Constructs automatically succeed at the save, and plant creatures automatically fail to save. Non-magical plants in the area that aren't creatures, such as trees and shrubs, wither and die instantly. This is a reprint of a spell that was released in the Elemental Evil Player's Companion. In my experience, it is very rarely seen use in-game. Honestly, spending an 8th level spell slot on an instantaneous damage almost always feels kind of disappointing. But it is in line with damage of spells at this level, not too much to say here. Next, we have Bleeding Darkness. This is a level 3 evocation spell available to Psions, wizards, and warlocks. It is one action to cast and has a range of 60 feet. It does have a costly component, but it isn't consumed, so it should just be a one-time cost. The spell itself has a lot going on, so let's take a look. You create an inky void in a 10-foot radius sphere at a point you can see above yourself within range. When you cast this spell, magical darkness pours from the sphere, filling a 10-foot radius, 40-foot tall cylinder, originating from the sphere until the start of your next turn. The cylinder is difficult terrain, and no light, magical or otherwise, can illuminate the area. When the darkness appears, each creature in the area must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or take 3d8 cold damage and have the blinded condition until the end of its next turn. A creature also makes its save when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn or ends its turn there. A creature makes this save only once per turn. Until the spell ends, you can make a magic action to move the sphere up to 20 feet horizontally and cause the sphere to pour magical darkness until the end of your next turn. Using a higher spell slot, the damage increases by 1d8 for each spell slot level above 3. Because the spell doesn't specify, it doesn't actually blind creatures in the area unless they fail the Constitution saving throw. Obviously, if you don't have dark vision, the darkness of the area will block vision, but normal dark vision should be sufficient to see into or out of this area unless you fail the saving throw. Because entering the area on a turn triggers the saving throw, this is a good spell to utilize if others in your party have good uses of forced movement. Next up, we have Ectoplasmic Trail. This is a necromancy spell available to Psions and warlocks. It takes a bonus action to cast, and it has an instantaneous duration. It says, you cloak yourself in spirits that leave ectoplasm in your wake until the end of your turn. While cloaked, you can move through occupied spaces as if they were difficult terrain, and moving doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. If you end your turn in such a space, you will return to the last unoccupied space you were in. While cloaked, whenever you enter the space of a creature, the creature becomes covered in ectoplasm until the end of your next turn. A creature covered in ectoplasm has its speed reduced by 10 feet and takes 2d8 necrotic damage at the start of its turn. A creature can only be covered in ectoplasm once during a turn. Using a higher level spell slot, While cloaked, your speed increases by 10 feet for each spell slot level above 2. It isn't a tremendous amount of damage, but it is on par with other second level spells. It is a cool way to weaponize your movement for a round. If you compare it to Shatter, the damage level is similar, as this doesn't have a saving throw for half damage. It keeps your action available for other things. I don't know if I would ever upcast it, but it's not a bad spell. Next up, we have a strange one. Ego Whip is a second level enchantment spell that is only available for Psions. It has a casting time of a reaction that you take when a creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself makes a charisma-based ability check or saving throw. It is important to note that it is when they make the check, so before they roll, not after they succeed. My initial thought before getting into the spell was, oh, it will be good for helping Banishment land. Great. But I was mistaken. Let's get into it. It says, the creature makes a charisma saving throw. On a failed save, the target must subtract 1d8 from the ability check or saving throw. Spending a second level spell slot to get a minus 1d8 from a saving throw might be really good. Except, in order for it to do anything, they have to fail a charisma save against your spell save DC. In that case, since it only works against charisma saves and checks, they likely would have failed the save you wanted them to fail anyways. Overall, this spell is too clunky. I can't imagine ever using it as a player. I also want to clarify, it's too clunky in its current iteration, but I do like the idea. It's a better and more balanced version of Silvery Barbs. I like the idea that it isn't just a reflavored version of a bunch of different spells. Before we get into this next part, any of my players who are watching this, I'm gonna need you to skip the next little bit. I'll put something on the screen when you can start listening again. Alright, are you gone? If you figure this out immediately, I'm gonna know you cheated. I do think that there is a use case for this spell as a DM. When a player is making an important charisma check, and you want to trigger a mystery investigation sequence for the players to figure out why this is happening to them. It works in that case because it's only available to Psions who get to ignore verbal components, and the only component here is verbal, meaning there is no indication of who is casting it. I think to do this effectively, you would kind of have to get into a meta place. For example, they are about to try to persuade the king to help them stop a war. The party face gets all the buffs, Bardic Inspiration, Guidance, Enhance Ability, etc. Then, after making their heartfelt plea, ask for a persuasion check. Right before they make it, ask for that charisma save. Don't explain why. If they succeed the save, don't tell them why. If they fail, have them make the check, adding the buffs, and then tell them to roll the d8 as a penalty. Describe an uncharacteristic stutter or a sudden doubt in their convictions. Again, don't explain what is happening. Then let the party try to investigate and find the psionic spy in the court. I'm not sure if it would actually be worth that much effort, but as a generous read, that is the best I could do for this spell. If you can think of any other creative uses, please tell me about them in the comments. Alright, let's get everyone back. On to the next one. Enemies Abound is back. It was previously introduced in Xanthar's Guide to Everything, and it hasn't really changed. It's still available to bards, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards, but it's also available to Psions. No other real changes, so I'm just going to put it up on the screen if you want to read it. Next up, Intellect Fortress. We're in the same boat here as we were with Enemies Abound. It's back without any real changes beyond formatting, more in line with the 2024 rule set. Life Inversion Field is a new spell. It is a level 4 abjuration spell, available to clerics, scions, and sorcerers. It is one action to cast and has a range of self. It lasts for 1 minute and requires concentration. It says, an aura radiates from you in a 30-foot emanation. For the duration, when you create the aura, you regain 4d8 hit points. Whenever you regain hit points, you can choose a creature you can see in the aura and force it to make a Constitution saving throw. And on a failed save, the creature takes necrotic damage equal to half the amount of hit points you regained, round up. A creature makes this save only once per turn. Using a higher level spell slot. The healing increases by 1d8 for each spell slot level above 4. I feel like there was a typo here, where they missed saying how you can use this over the course of the minute. I would imagine it was supposed to say, when you create the aura and as a magic action on subsequent rounds, you regain 4d8 hit points. Whenever you regain the hit points, you can, etc., etc. With that being added in, it becomes a useful concentration spell. If the survey period hasn't already closed whenever you're watching this video, go make a recommendation. The next spell we have to cover is Life Siphon. This is a first level evocation spell available only to Psions. Has a range of 120 feet and requires an action. It says, you fire an orb of psionic energy fueled by your life force at a creature you can see within range. Make a ranged spell attack. On a hit, the target takes 1d10 psychic damage, and you can expend 1 hit point die to increase the damage by 1d10, using a higher level spell slot. The damage increases by 1d10, and the number of hit dice you can expend increases by 1 for each spell slot level above 1. As a first level spell, the damage amount is terrible. If you upcast it, it does scale fairly well. And if you upcast it and critically hit, it will deal incredible amounts of damage. Mental Prison is back. The only real change is now it actually causes the charm condition. Before, it just said that if a creature was immune to charm, they automatically succeeded the saving throw. They also reworked the damage amounts to be more consistent. Overall, I think it is slightly less damage on average, but still a decent spell. Psionic Blast is a new spell. It is a 6th level evocation spell available to Psions and Wizards, and it is 1 action to cast. It says, you unleash a concussive burst of psionic energy. Each creature in a 60-foot cone originating from you makes an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 68 psychic damage and has the stun condition until the start of your next turn. On a successful save, the creature takes only half as much damage. Using a higher level spell slot, the damage increases by 1d8 for each spell slot level above 6. If you're using this spell, the damage is okay, but not great. It's really good for giving the stun condition until the start of your next turn. It's a good spell that will likely get a lot of use. Psychic Scream is also back. As a 9th level enchantment spell, the only real change is that in the previous version, creatures who were killed by this spell had their head explode, while now it is any creature that is reduced to 0 hit points. Again, it's a pretty solid spell. Stunned is a rough condition, and importantly, they are stunned until they succeed on an intelligence saving throw. For some creatures, and for a lot of PCs, that is a very high bar to have to cross. Raulothim's Psychic Lance is also back. No real changes there. It's a good spell, and it always has been. Next up, we have Summon Astral Entity. This is a similar spell to other summon spells we have seen in the Player's Handbook and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. You can choose between 3 types of entity to summon: Crystal, Ghostly, or Ectoplasmic. Under traits, the Ectoplasmic and Ghost entities have an incorporeal passage. All 3 get different actions, so let's talk about each of those real quick. All of them have multi-attack, and they can make as many attacks as half the level of the spell rounded down. So if you cast it at base 3rd level, it only gets 1 attack. But if you upcast it, it can take 2 or more attacks depending on the spell slot level you use. The Crystal Entity can make a melee spell attack that deals 1d10 plus 3 plus the spell's level in piercing damage. The Ectoplasmic does a ranged attack roll that does 1d6 plus 3 plus the spell's level in psychic damage. Whether it hits or misses, each creature within the 5 feet of the target has its speed reduced by 5. And the Ghostly Entity can make a ranged attack that does 1d8 plus 3 plus the spell's level in psychic damage with no other effect. The Crystal Entity also has a reaction when the spirit is hit by a melee attack roll. It halves the damage round down it takes from that attack, and the spirit can then teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space it can see. Next up, Tasha's Mind Whip is back. In the last Scion Unearthed Arcana, they nerfed it pretty severely. But here, they returned it to nearly where it was before. It's a great spell. The only change from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything was it used to prevent reactions entirely, and now it only stops opportunity attacks. Almost every feature in 2014 that prevented reactions has been changed to be in line with this, so no surprises there. Alright, in the home stretch, another new spell is Telekinetic Crush. It's a 3rd level transmutation spell available to Psions, Sorcerers, and Warlocks. It is 1 action to cast and only has verbal components, meaning no components for Psions. The spell says, you create a field of crushing telekinetic force in a 30-foot cube within range. Each creature in the area makes a strength saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 5d6 force damage and has the prone condition. On a successful save, the target only takes half as much damage. Using a higher level spell slot, the damage increases by 1d6 for each spell slot level above 3. This spell is directly comparable to Fireball. It does a little bit less damage, but the prone condition, depending on your party makeup, could really help out your melee damage dealers for a round. I like that it exists, and it will make a good option. Alrighty, Telekinetic Fling. This is a evocation cantrip available only to Psions. It says, choose 1 non-magical object weighing 1 to 5 pounds within 10 feet of you that isn't being worn or carried to wreathe in psionic energy and fire at a creature within range. Make a ranged spell attack against the target. On a hit, the target takes 1d10 force damage. On a hit or miss, the object falls to the ground undamaged. Cantrip upgrade. The damage increases by 1d10 when you reach levels 5, 11, and 17. This is a solid damage dealing cantrip. D10 is a solid amount, super reliable damage type, no additional effect. I suspect most Psions will grab this as their go-to damage dealing cantrip. Last but not least, we have Thought Form. This is a 6th level transmutation spell that requires a costly component of brain matter in a 500 gold piece vessel or container. It's a bonus action to cast and lasts for 1 minute with concentration. It says, you briefly transform into a psionic spirit. You gain the following benefits until the spell ends. Ghostly form. You have immunity to the poison and psychic damage, and immunity to the exhaustion condition. Incorporeal movement. You have a fly speed of 60 feet and can hover. You can move through occupied spaces as if they were difficult terrain. If the spell ends in such a space, you will return to the last unoccupied space you were in. Psionic recharge. As a magic action, you can touch a creature, which can be yourself, and roll 1d6. The creature regains 1 expended spell slot, the level of which equals half the number rolled, round up, or lower. Once a creature regains a spell slot from this spell, that creature can't do so again until it finishes a long rest. Honestly, as a combat spell, it'll be good in an encounter that features a lot of poison or psychic damage. And flight is always good. My immediate thought was about the out-of-combat ability to recharge spell slots for an entire party. If you have a lot of casters in your party, this will be amazingly good, but it will largely depend on your party composition. Overall, good spell, not game-breaking. Overall, all of these spells are fine. Just make sure you figure out what you're going to do with Ego Whip and Life Inversion Field, and you should be good to go. Alright, let's cover the Psion spell list. I will put the full spell list on the screen, and we'll talk about some of the standout options as we go along. If you aren't looking at the playtest document, I recommend pausing to look at each level so you can get the full list. All of the new or new to 2024 spells in this document are included on the Psion spell list, so I won't talk about any of those more than I already have. As far as cantrips go, there are definitely some standouts. Message might not actually be as useful since we automatically get telepathy, but Minor Illusion is one that I always like to pick up, whenever it comes up. You can never go wrong with Mind Sliver. I think if you are playing as a Metamorph, Blade Ward and True Strike are probably must-haves. The level 1 spell list, there are definitely the usual suspects. Mage Armor, Shield, Hideous Laughter, Sleep is definitely an interesting option. Thunderwave will be good, especially if you picked up the Destructive Thoughts, Psionic Discipline. Level 2 spells brings more interesting options. Detect Thoughts feels very thematic. Enlarge Reduce is always good. Hold Person, Invisibility, Mind Spike, and Suggestion are all very good options. I know I said I wouldn't say any more about the spells already included in this document, but Tasha's Mind Whip is so good. For level 3 spells, we are looking at some amazing spells, like Dispel Magic, Fear, Fly, Hypnotic Pattern, Major Image, and Sending. All fantastic options. Level 4 spells, some of the ones I would consistently look at are Banishment, Dimension Door, Greater Invisibility, Polymorph, and Summon Aberration. Level 5 spells, Animate Objects, Dominate Person, Dream, Hold Monster, Synaptic Static for some amazing AoE damage and debuffs. Telekinesis is also fantastic. Some of my favorite level 6 spells we are looking at are Eye Bite, Disintegrate, Mass Suggestion, and True Seeing. Looking at level 7 spells, Force Cage used to be the go-to, but in 2024, I don't know if I can really recommend that one anymore, now that it requires concentration. Reverse Gravity and Teleport are solid options though. Depending on your campaign, Etherealness and Plane Shift can be essential to have somewhere in your party. The level 8 spells we are looking at are Mind Blank, Dominate Monster, Antipathy Sympathy, Glibness, and Maze. They are all situationally amazing spells. And 9th level spells, there are no bad options here. Astral Projection is amazing, Foresight, Power Word Kill got a really solid buff in 2024. Shape Change is incredible, Time Stop can be an encounter-ending spell. I'm surprised that True Polymorph didn't make the cut, but here we are. Overall, we are in a really good place. There are significantly more good options than spells you will be able to prepare. So, and don't hate me for this, Psions make pretty good spellcasters. Now, I have to acknowledge the issue inherent in this whole discussion. That is that Psions in the Forgotten Realms lore are specifically not spellcasters. In fact, many times in books and other forms of Forgotten Realms media, Psionics has greatly confused and concerned wizards and sorcerers. For example, I know it would be incredibly jarring for some people who have invested a lot of time learning about the Forgotten Realms lore to see a psionic spell counterspelled or dispelled. For those people, I understand your frustration. Hopefully, the fact that Psions can ignore material and verbal components will be enough to let you live out your dreams. Or just ignore the fact that they are spells at your table and treat them like class features or other actions instead. I still like it as a class. I understand the frustration, I really do. But I personally would be happy to have a Psion player character at my table. It's a fun and fresh feeling class that could bring a lot of fun. Thanks for sticking around. I know we went through a lot there, and we still have more to cover. If you want to see my take on the general class features, check out my video from last week. And if you want to see my take on the subclasses, subscribe to the channel so you can see the video next week. Make sure to like the video and tell me your thoughts on these spells in the comments below. Thank you so much, and until next time.